Hey folks, your OS Reviews. We're watching our video first look and a quick review of a digital voice recorder Bluetooth watch that's created by RUIZU. It sells on Amazon for $50 flat, and although it isn't technically a smartwatch per se, it does categorized as part of a wearable because it features an OLED screen. You can record memos, you can record meetings, notes, lectures, as well as play it back and use it as an MP3 player. It obviously also shows off the time and date information, so kind of an interesting product that fuses between those purposes. You can drag and drop files as well directly from a computer. Mac and PC are both supported, and in the box there's access to a quick start guide that tells you how to use it, how to set it up and charge it, and there is the watch itself, which we'll take a closer look at in a second. Underneath here, we have access to the accessories, and they correspond to a pretty generic pair of in-ear style headphones branded by the company with some in-ear tips as well. You can use these or use your own 3.5mm pair of headphones. They're standard, and you can listen to music directly from the watch or your voice memos. It uses a standard micro USB cable for charging as well, and it takes roughly 2.5 hours to completely charge up the watch. Afterwards, you can use it in our testing for roughly 2 to 3 days of continuous use before you need to recharge it again. So let's take a quick look at the design of the watch first. The first thing that you notice is that the front is made out of tempered glass, so it does feel reasonably high quality, and there's also a synthetic leather band. From the photos, I also thought that the watch would be a lot larger and bulkier, but I found it to be surprisingly lightweight and small, as well as petite. You can really cover it up with your hand, and it's really something that will rest comfortably on wrists of both men and women, so it's unisex and seems to be pretty well crafted. However, I did think that the display would have been larger. It is backlit, it is fairly bright. I'll show you guys that later on as well, but you can see how it only correlates to a small portion of the screen, and I think they could have expanded it a little bit more just to make it seem a bit more high-tech. On the side here, there is a rubber flap which covers up the micro USB port for charging, and you can see that this is what's underneath. There's also a dedicated power switch which you can tap on for a few seconds and also use it to pair through and cycle through the various modes. In here, I have access to an integrated 16GB flash memory capacity, which you can also customize if you want to purchase a 4, 8, or 32GB version. They come at corresponding prices. There's also a bit more information about the company. The back of the watch is made out of the plastic material, but it still feels fairly good in terms of its build, and I suspect it's polycarbonate and seems to be just one piece. The sides and the keys are a little bit small for my tastes, but they are fairly risen above the surface and easy enough to tap on and to press, and they correspond to the volume adjustments as well as a play pause key once you are playing back a particular track. I like the fact that you have these in a very ergonomic location, and its placement of volume up and volume down makes sense as well. So let's go through some of the various modes that you'll find on this watch. So when you power it on, there's just the RUIZU logo. You can see the OLED screen just pops up. It's very bright. The contrast here I think is pretty good, and you can definitely see it even under sunlight, although the glass does tend to kind of glare and reflect the light in some cases. The interface here is pretty easy to understand. There's access to simple icons and a word representation at the bottom here. There's also a logo for the battery status that will tell you how much is remaining. I can cycle up and down through the various screens, such as going through the settings, using the voice recorder and directly launching that. There's also the music player. If you have music tracks loaded onto here, dragging into the internal memory from a computer, or after you've linked it up using Bluetooth to your phone, it can play back some files from your phone as well, which is pretty cool. There's also that Bluetooth function, so to pair it up for the very first time with any Android or iOS device. And again, that just takes you back to setting. So let's take a look at settings, for instance. Some quick things that you can do include these recording settings. So if you can change the resolution of the files, you can also go through and change the power off status. So after a few seconds of inactivity, the screen will dim. A sleep timer, it can also be found here. And if we go down display settings in terms of its brightness, date and time that you can set up for the first time, as well as language information. And if we tap on language, for instance, you can see it supports quite a few. Spanish is on here, English, Italian, and if I go all the way down, Chinese, Japanese, Korean, so really a massive list, surprisingly, so it works. So starting a voice recording is fairly simple as well. Let's tap on the OK key there, And afterwards, I can just tap on it once more. You can see it's already started to record. Down below here, I have some basic information about the file name in addition to the function in terms of its resolution and its fidelity settings. There's also other applications of this which are advertised, such as starting a recording once voice or sound is detected. So that's pretty cool. It makes it a bit more spy-like, but it's pretty discreet and easy to use. Once you're satisfied, you can also go back to the menus directly or tap on this once to pause the recording, and then you can exit out of this particular app. So it works pretty well. You can see this is a recording I just made. If I tap on this OK, I can play it back, and that's what it's doing right now. It's a sound file. If you play back and plug in a pair of headphones or transfer it out. As far as the sound quality is concerned, I was fairly pleased. The microphone here actually can't really be seen, as you saw from that quick tour of the hardware. It's disguised pretty well. It doesn't seem to be on the surface or anything, but it picked up sound actually surprisingly decently. Obviously, it's not a professional microphone, so it's not as good as fancier versions that can zoom in or zoom out of sound sources. It doesn't cancel out all of your background sounds or anything like that. But it does a good enough job for basic conferences, for some lectures where the room is relatively quiet. It picks up whoever is speaking fairly well. Some ambient background sound can still be detected, but the best thing here is that it gets loud enough to still pick up what your primary audio source is. So it works pretty well for general voice memos, notes, and recording stuff. Not great if you are recording music. It gets a little distorted. The microphone, again, isn't that high quality. It isn't noise canceling. So those are a few things to keep in mind. For the purposes of a watch, it does work surprisingly well. Even if you're wearing it on your wrist and kind of moving it around and maybe writing or something, it doesn't record that much of the movement or the wind. So it does seem to still work pretty well as a wearable. Doesn't distract too much from its primary purpose of a voice recorder, which is cool. So tapping on this key once again, you can see this is what the time and date info looks like, shows the day of the week, the time information, and the calendar view as well, so everything remains fairly visible and easy to use. Let's go back from this particular application and exit out of it. Some other features on here. So music, this is essentially the same as voice recorder if you had any files on here, which we don't, but it supports both MP3 and WMA, and it sorts it by artist name as well as albums. Obviously, cover arts can't be seen, but it can also sort through genres and create playlists as well, which works, again, surprisingly well. And it syncs up nicely with your phone as well to play back some quick music tracks from your device if that's what you want to do. And once it is linked up to a particular phone, what it's also able to do is vibrate and give you a notification once an incoming call or text message is coming through, so that you can answer it directly by tapping OK and use the microphone on here to directly talk, using it as kind of a speakerphone to answer your phone call, which is